Yeah, hello everyone. It's late in the afternoon, but definitely not too late to dive into the topic of the year. So I'm excited to spend the next 40 minutes exploring agentic AI, not just what's possible, but what's actually happening. So please join me in welcoming our panelists. The CEO of Feedly, Edwin Kodabachan. Vice President AI at Prosus Group, Paul van der Boer. Co-founder and CEO of Alix, Alexander Mysore. From SAP, responsible for data and AI software investments, special partnerships and innovation, Emmanuel Kasimatis. And the co-founder and CEO at Daytona, Ivan Burasin. So I think we need one more chair. It's such a big panel. So just sit down, please. We get another one, I guess. You sit over there. Perfect. So just take my mic. I have another one. Perfect. So to begin with, I want to clarify what we are actually talking about. When people hear the term agentic, many immediately think of AI agents like smart assistants that can do a task for you, such as booking a flight or replying to an email. But that's just one small part of the picture. So, Edwin, what does agentic AI really mean, especially when we talk about full business processes and autonomous workflows at scale?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I think as foundational model gets more sophisticated, they start to support planning, they start to support reasoning. It is quite natural to think that they're going to be able to complete tasks that are going to be more sophisticated than simple request response, that they're going to start undertaking multi-steps workflows, connect to multiple applications. And so I feel like the term agentic, the part that is common and agreed on with everyone, is this form of generative AI that is running behind the scene. The part that's going to get interesting in this conversation where not everybody agrees is when it comes to how you secure and make sure that they can connect to application in a secure way that doesn't endanger your privacy, or when you start thinking about how do you orchestrate, or even how autonomous they should be. I think that's where the definition gets a little bit different, and there's different answers that are all right. And I think depending on what answer you pick, you end up in a different part of this idea maze with different solutions that have headwinds or backwinds.
Mm-hmm. Ivan, do you want to add something?
I disagree with everything you said. I'm just kidding. Yeah, so basically I think about when you think of, an AI agent, basically I think about it as a digital productive person or thing. So something that can take on a task for you from end to end. That's the idea, right? Like, can you give it a task, go out and do X? So booking a flight, not as easy as we think it would, and that's always the example. But it's like any job that we have today. It's like, oh, can you go out and find me whatever, some grad students that are just finished that have hobbies in XYZ that I would like to hire, and then just go out, find them, send me a report, and then draft an email so I can send it. Can they do the whole thing end to end? And for most things, not yet, but the infrastructure is coming in place to do that. And what you touched on, I'll just touch on that in a second, is right now they don't have agency, and it's the things that they can and cannot do are still very small, so they're not quote unquote dangerous yet. Just for clarity, what we build and what we do. So we run, let's say, computers for agents. So if you equate a human to an agent, we are the MacBook to that agent. So if your agent needs to browse the web, install something in the terminal, code, whatever it be, we spin up a sandbox that is isolated and it's quote unquote secure. Basically, if it kills the sandbox, it kills the sandbox. That's fine. You can spin up another one and that's it. But what we're getting information from customers and users right now really goes to what you're saying is, one, we have people asking, can we now stop outgoing ports? So can I just access XYZ websites and addresses like nothing else? We don't want it to go anywhere else. Can't leak anything. And it's even gone more extreme where people are asking, can we actually stop it from starting and stopping processes in this machine. So as these LLMs get smarter, can we lock down these things even more? So I kind of went off the verge of the question, but you started that, and that was quite interesting to me and really hit home.
Perfect. Alexandra, what might a company look like in the future if this technology really works?
Yeah. So at Alix, we have a really interesting use case. So we are using Agentic AI to automate estate settlement or wealth transfer. So when someone you love passes away, there's all these administrative tasks that need to happen. To date, it's been mostly paper-driven and human-driven with point solution experts like CPAs, lawyers, people like that. At Alix, we're using Agentic AI. And so we really believe in having a human in the loop, especially right now. And so it's been an interesting discussion as more and more of our care team members' tasks start to get automated. What then is the role of the human? And for us, we view it sort of two ways. The care team member becomes a manager, except the team is now agentic digital teammates. So I think that's an interesting shift. And in our world, our care team, our human care teams, get to focus more on being human and interacting with the families. And I think that's another important key too, like the use case for agentic AI. For us, it's mostly back office. Our families, the people that we serve, they don't care for a tech company. They just want to know that they can trust us and that we'll get the job done.
Mm-hmm. Emmanuel, how do you see it? So what might the company look like if agentic AI is fully embedded in day-to-day operations?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and so I work at SAP, so I'll give you the SAP view, of course. I think the world is shifting now from software to platforms again, and software has been in a number of cycles of going to platforms, going to best of breed, going to platforms, going to best of breed. And I think we're going now back to a moment where we're going back to platforms because AI needs to be managed centrally for customers. Customers cannot just have 50 providers. So when you ask the future of agentic AI, and if you have to imagine the organization of the future, we have first to think about the platform that supplies it. And I like an analogy. Somebody in the audience, she told me today, an agent is like a soccer player. So soccer player has a purpose. They are trained, they have rules, and they interact with each other. So the role of the platform is also to enable collaboration between the different agents, internally and externally. And I would claim SAP now has a role as one of the platforms to enable everybody in the room, startups, scale-ups, partners, customers, to build these agents in a secure manner, in a manner that is governed, and then in a manner that can be collaborative with each other. So SAP came up with this AI foundation, which is an environment where you can develop your agents. And I'm very glad to say that now this new business model where people can build on top of SAP is enabled, and for me, that's the future.
We'll come back to this later on. Even sometimes it all sounds like plug and play, I guess. So companies raise expectation that you can just buy your agents off the shelf. But it takes much more effort if you really want AI agents to increase productivity. So what does a company actually need to do before setting up agentic workflows, and how long does it really take?
I mean, I feel that onboarding an agent is more like onboarding a human than installing software. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot there in the sense of education of that agent itself. There's multiple ways to do that, but definitely you want your agent to have context and rules and tones of voice and thoughts, and depending on what the agent does, of course. So agent can do many, many things. But also on the consumer side is depending on how well you understand how to use the agents itself is how well it will actually perform. So just a small caveat. Right now, I believe that even if agents, and we talked about this earlier when we had the chat, even if models don't get to the next step function, with the tools around the models, they will be way, way more productive than they are now. We can extract value for the next decade, even if we don't get better models, just with the tools to get better agents. And so that just shows you about how much you can get more out of an agent if, one, you expose it to the right tools, and two, you as the user of it learn how to interact with it to get the most out of it.
Paul, do you want to build on that?
Yeah, so I think the way I look at agents is very simple, right? In essence, agents are LLMs that interact with the world, and the way
I disagree with that. So just can I say that? I believe it, and I'll give you that. So agent is basically the intersection. It's a piece of software intersection between the model, the human, and the tools that it has. If you can disagree with that, but I'm just
we agreed in advance we would disagree all the time to make it more fun. So yeah, I disagree with that. But if you think about the complexity of ways of interacting with the world that agents can have, the simplest way we can think of in the digital world is agents interacting with APIs. And those are a lot of the ways that we're starting to see agents come to life today. After that, you see agents interacting with more unstructured environments like browsers, right? So now they can click around, and even there, agents are sort of doing great work, and that's where the humans come in. And then after that, you may imagine giving agents access to actual entire computer environments, which is, I think, what you guys are working on.
we do all three of those things that you
Yeah.
said.
And then after that, you can think about agents starting to interact with the real world, right? So robots. At Prosus, we're a big group, so we serve about 2 billion consumers around the world. We're mostly sort of on the first 3 tiers today, right? So it's the digital world. To make them work well, I completely agree. Sorry, I will disagree later. That in fact, giving access to tools gets us, a long way, and actually, we're struggling making even that work well, right? So in terms of levels of complexity, we're moving up the sort of complexity let's say line. But then you can also think about autonomy along all those 3 things. So it's sort of like a 2x2. I think on the autonomy side, also there, we're just making very small steps to be able to give agents more, let's say, agency in helping us in many ways we can imagine.
And when agents communicate with each other, there's a risk that small errors can cascade, isn't it? So how can that be prevented?
I think controls are about having humans in the loop right now. Just to kind of connect the 2 points, what you were saying earlier, I think, we're talking about how hard it is to even book a ticket, but you think about the type of work that we do across financial transactions, across closing down subscriptions, taxes, all the things. These are really complex workflows, and really, really figuring out how humans do it at a task level is key. And when you think about large regulated companies like insurance and banks, they do have tons of data, but they don't have well documented at task level how humans are doing the work to get the job done. So I think that's an important piece to kind of add, especially for more complex types of workflows.
I'll just add, controls brings governance, and I think we're at again a special moment. I call it the governance monster is arising. Because companies are having on-prem, hybrid, cloud, sovereign environments, and it all needs to work together, and it all needs to be AI-enabled, and except on-prem depends, and it all needs to have agents, and these agents need to communicate together, and it all needs to be governed and have control. So this governance monster is extremely important, but it's also very, very complex. We need regulations, we need controls, we need platforms to enable such rules to be created. And we need it to be secure. It's not so easy. There will be a lot of complexity, but where there's complexity, there are solutions, and we make progress with time.
So we're entering a world of more bureaucracy. Yay! So where is human oversight still needed? Ivan, what do you think?
For agents, everywhere still. I mean, I think we're pretty far off from what we see and what we do. They're basically right now when you give agents access to things, so which you shouldn't, but let's say you give them access to whatever, you actually right now don't know if it's an agent acting on your behalf. So to make an example, if I give my agent access to my email, in the logs, it will look like I did that, not my agent, right? And so then it's very hard to backtrack on what the agent did or did not do. And so there's a lot to be solved around just authentication and authorization of the agent. And there's people smarter than me on that topic working that are actually here as well. Because it's one, is the agent an agent of me, of myself, of Ivan? Is it an agent that it's on its own behalf? Is it who is this agent and what is it doing, and we all need that, if nothing else, for post-fact logging of what happened. That's like, you actually want to stop it to happen, but you also want to say, oh, if XYZ happened, did this agent do it, and whose agent is that, on whose behalf is doing? And that has to be integrated across every single service that we use today. So if your agent...
So for every agent, you have one employee responsible for it?
So what I want to say is that every service in the world, so think like Expedia or, Booking.com or like Ryanair, whatever you want, they all have to be able to log my agent. That's somehow, right? Like, how do I know it's my agent? And there has to be limits. Oh, can my agent buy me a business class ticket that costs $15,000? Or can it only buy a direct flight with Ryanair for $50? Like, there's so many things you have to solve there. And I think there's a lot to do, and a lot of companies and value will be created in that layer as well.
I imagine this kind of LinkedIn profile where you can read leading a team of 100 AI agents. Is that happening already?
Yes and no. Like, people are doing it. There's a lot of hype as well. You also want to hype out what is happening. But I do know, like, people do spin up agents to solve problems for them today, and multiple agents for that. So the founder of Crew AI, I don't know him personally, but I did watch his talk, which is a framework for creating agents. His whole idea is like, he was running a business with just multiple agents, and then, I went out and made it easy for everyone else to do. So they can do things to an extent, depends on what you're trying to achieve and what you prompt, but there is also a lot of like signaling in like, these are, there's hype, attention, creation around people doing that.
Paul, let's come back to the governance question. So what new governance challenges do agentic AI and autonomous workflows create inside organizations? What do you think? What's your perspective on that?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it comes back to the quality and the trust you place in these systems you build. In our view, I think actually humans aren't needed in all the agentic workflows. So I disagree with that. I think there's lots of simple tasks that are repeated, thousands, tens of thousands of time in the back office, where if the actual task is well defined, you can get an agent to do it completely autonomously, and there will be some quality you might need to do, like, if you're doing customer support, you obviously will still do that quality monitoring and so on. That's maybe a piece of governance that you do. 1% of calls get transcribed and analyzed and classified and scored for quality. As you move into the more complex tasks, of course, that's where you need to make sure that you're sort of on the right frontier of what we think is still at the right quality acceptance task. I think wealth management is a good example where you probably want to have very high quality and a lot of human oversight. But in our world, there's just so many tasks that are repeated tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of times in very well-defined business functions, where it's finance or marketing or sales or customer support, where agents can actually take over the vast majority of volume and with very well-defined quality metrics, do a really good job. And in fact, we manage that typically through agentic quality controls, which involve fun things like labeling parties. Like, you sit around, order some pizza, label data, and evaluate your agent. And as you do that several iterations, you get the confidence you need to say, okay, this intern has now graduated to a junior, to a meteor, to a senior. Like with humans, colleagues, right? In some way, not to stretch the analogy too much. But I think that does happen. And, you label the data, you provide the quality control governance, and at some point, you get the confidence you need to have this agent be part and in control of a certain part of the work of an organization or enterprise.
Awesome. That leads me to my next question. So I recently joined a roundtable on the future of professionals at Oxford. And one question that came up was, what do managers actually manage in the future? So HR used to be a big part of the job. Will that change? What do you think? And what kind of skills will matter most?
Well, I think one of the hardest things is when I interview folks for our teams, the AI team, the things we look at today are things that 5 years ago nobody was doing. So I'm fairly confident that people I hire today in 5 years, maybe in 2 years, are going to be doing things I don't even know exist today. So it definitely makes the interviewing part challenging. More looking at the HR function, one of the things we've joked about is that we also bring in AI agents into our teams, is maybe we should have, like we have an employee register, we should have an agent register. And who manages? Like, every agent should have its manager. Why not? Like, you're in charge of your agent, and you're in charge of your agent, and the quality control therefore becomes your problem or my problem. So those things definitely will come into play. and probably many more things. But I think from an HR perspective, a lot more work, a lot more scope is going to be handled by smaller teams. So that's a challenge in itself.
So Edwin, as a CEO of an actual company, so what will you manage in the future?
I think we have a slightly different perspective where I'm not sure that the metaphor of agent is an employee or replaces employee. For us, it's more about, an agent being able to do 85, 90% of these complex tasks and being really a partner of a human who basically still captures the empathy, the creativity, the grit. I think it's more about how Michael was using the term exoskeleton. It's how it's going to enable each employee to be a lot more productive than necessarily, having teams or thinking of this metaphor of an army of agents replacing your employees one by one.
Emmanuel, I'd love to hear your perspective on that too.
I mean, not all agents are created equal, and if you have the right framework, it will lower the amount of work that the human has to do. That's what I wanted to say here. I just go back to my analogy of soccer and players, right? If the field has the right lawn, and if you have the right referee, and if the audience around the soccer match behaves, then it's suddenly much easier for different soccer players to play together, and there's maybe less overheads and monitoring needed. So, at SAP, we have an approach where we try to give a framework for AI. So we try to make it relevant, responsible, reliable. Those are 3 values, very strong. And we have a board for each use case, each agent that reviews what is going on.
Okay.
This was not the work of an agent.
No.
What was that?
I don't know.
All good? Okay.
I good?
Wow.
It's a test to see if I can continue my sentence. So SAP put in place those frameworks, and we are actually also monitoring very closely regulations, which we believe are quite important. In Europe, we have the EU AI Act. We created an offering called locally hosted AI, which is for Europe, when SAP puts certain models on its infrastructure, and then you can build agents within a trusted environment that SAP administers. But it's all these frameworks that are important, and it's not only SAP, it's different companies that need to put it in place. So what are the values that each use case has to answer for?
Even if managers in the future are guiding agents instead of leading people, what should that user interface look like? I imagine a bit like a video game, something like that. Is that totally off?
I mean, I don't think anyone knows what the new interface looks like. I mean, I'll do just like analogies with coding. I don't know how many people are coders in here, but basically you always use like a text editor or an IDE to code. And now that's sort of changing where you have like the vibe coding products, like the bullets and levelables. Now you type in text and whatnot. But still for like higher complexity, you still need an IDE. But even like Windsurf, which is a sponsor here, they also have like an agentic mode. Cursor also has an IDE, but now you can also ask it on the phone. So it's like a multi-type of interface. And the more people that I talk to that are building out these things all agree that the new interface, at least for coding, will be completely different than anything that we've been looking at historically, and we don't know what that interface is yet. And so I'm going to just pull the analogy that for everything else that we interact with in these new systems, it will be different than what we have historically been accustomed to, and no one actually knows what it is. We're trying to figure it out between all the different interfaces, and the only thing I can think of where we were at this is if anyone remembers the first like Palm Pilots, iPacs, like handheld things, it was like a Windows on a small screen, which was not ideal. You had like a pen, you had a start button. And so it was like, it's trying to fit that in there. And similar to that, we're trying to create these new interfaces with machines that we don't know how to communicate with in existing interfaces. And I think that will all basically change as we move forward.
To add to that point, just because I'm remembering the BlackBerry.
We're old. We're
I
old,
love
yeah.
that button. I miss it. But when iPhone came out with the touch, it all of a sudden unlocked so much possibility just through a reinvention of the interface. And I agree, we don't know what this new interface will look like in the future, but I do believe that having a real human, as an interface will be a premium for a lot of use cases. And, I think that's pretty interesting to think about a human as an interface into AI native type companies.
Paul, do you want to disagree with them?
I love agents, so I think in many cases I would prefer a fast response from an agent than from a human. I'm just kidding. I'm just trying to disagree here. No, especially for my wealth management, I prefer a human. But I, we build agents for e-commerce, right? So if you think about shopping online, I think there's going to be a lot of big questions around what is the form factor of this agentic flow going to look like. I think we all fell into sort of the temptation of building a ChatGPT for everything, including for shopping. And it turns out that that's not a better experience. We learned that the hard way. But then what is the better experience? And, part of that is these models being able to deal with voice, for example, them being much more intelligent and being able to reason what I like based on my shopping history, the fact that they understand the environment in which I'm looking for a certain item, understanding my intent better. All of those things should be able to give us a much better experience. But I haven't seen anything that really took off that sort of shows what that will look like.
Add on that, I hate to do the analogy, which is always Uber. So Uber was like a mobile native app because you had the Uber app knew where you were geographically. So you didn't have to like put in coordinates, address, it just like knew where you were, and it was on your phone with you. And that was like a mobile native app. And so agent native, to your point, and I agree, I absolutely agree, not disagreeing, is like no one has still created, what does the agent actually know inherently? And then you remove all that layer from the interface because it can do that by its own. I feel that's something, but nothing exists yet, right?
But what you're talking about at the core is trust and credibility, right? And so I think that's where, as agents mature, maybe as humans we'll trust it more depending on the use case. But that's where I think that gating factor will be, is how much trust and credibility do we have in the agent doing the work?
So how...
I think there's one thing that's, when we go back about these agents, today the apps are predictable. We can navigate them and, whereas a lot of the interactions with agents are becoming a lot more dynamic. The first generation agents, we had to tell them step by step what to do. Now we give them a goal and they come back to us and they say, hey, I'm still missing this information, or they give you a preview of the result and they let you refine it and provide comment to it. So I think there is a chance that the whole concept of an application, as you were describing it, will be redefined to be something that's a lot more dynamic. Even for a shopping, you could imagine somebody giving you, asking you some question about your taste, showing you some results of what it looks like, enabling you to interact with this. And I think the big question is, will all these be in separate applications, or will ChatGPT and Claude become these more dynamic environments where you can build a shopping application and you can still benefit from all the context that Claude has about you and bring your application within those environments?
Jump in, even.
I was just going to jump on one thing that we didn't actually mention. So what we're talking about right now, I actually did think of one agent native app, which is Granola. I feel that's AI native-ish. But what we're talking about right now is what the interface that we consume as humans. So we to agent, and that is what we're talking about. But what is happening in the same time, that's where we sort of play as well, is when you send an agent off to do something, how does the agent experience the rest of the digital world for now? And so are you building that agent experience so the agent can get the information what it needs? Basically what I'm trying to explain is when you create any software or service now, or at least 2 years ago, you create a mobile view and a web view, maybe a tablet view, because they're different views. You will essentially create a new agent view. Like, do you have agent machine interfaces, be it MCP API, MCP to wrapper and API? We can talk about that. But do you have a machine interface so agents that you send out can consume your information and services autonomously entirely so that it can feed it back to the human? I think we haven't touched on that, and that's something that I think there's a whole economy and service and value being created on that level where people will think about agents first in their experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we think about this very deliberately. We call it making our platforms AI operable, which is essentially agent operable. So if you want to sort of get a feeling for how smart our agents aren't really, try asking any of these agents, Manus, Devin, and so on, to order you a pizza to your home, and you'll see them stumble over your websites, and you'll see that the world isn't made for agents to navigate them, and so we need to solve that. And even if they can navigate the browser to do that specific task, then how will they know what the best offer is for you, which ones are open, what the current supply and demand looks like, what are other folks saying about these products? So there's a lot of work that we need to do to get these agents to actually be able to operate on the platforms that we have. And that's actually pretty hard work.
So it's a bit of a hen and egg problem, isn't it?
Yeah, so basically every provider, so if you're thinking about, I don't know, Pizza Hut or Domino's Pizza should have an API for their agents where it's just one request. Send me a pizza that size, this is my address. It's like one API call, done. Then there's the payment part, which is complex, but it's not going to go, which it has to do now, navigate to the web, click 20 times. It breaks, it's slow, doesn't make sense. It probably won't get to the end. Whereas if it can have an API exposed, it'll just like, here's the request, send it, done. Right?
Emmanuel, how do you help your customers to get ready for this agentic world?
It's both easy and hard. Easy because they all want AI. To get AI, they need cloud. So some of them are already cloud. Some of them have to move on-prem to cloud. So for SAP, it's a fantastic moment at the moment because all the customers were already moving to cloud, and it's easier now. It's hard at the same time because some customers have different readiness for adoption. So some of them want to be very innovative. Some of them want to be very secure. So there's a life cycle of customers. We try to give choice and be ready for everybody, different stages, small companies, large companies, ready to do full AI, not ready, hybrid environments, cloud environments, regardless. But one thing remains, on the structure. We try to give structure, and this structure will be very important for the world. Let's imagine if every single person in the room now has 10 agents to order pizza, do trips, do research, do work, etc. What does the traffic on the web look like? It grows exponentially, right? Mm-hmm. Is that something we want? Or we go back to your comment that we need to control a little bit what the agents do. Actually, there was some news recently from a listed company that they are going to restrict some traffic and classify if it's agent or not to protect creators, because creators are not machines, and there's a human to protect in creators. So actually, to your point, I think we're at the beginning of transformation, and with transformation, we have to rethink how things work, and we have to control things as well.
So we touched on AI native companies. Who has the real advantage right now, from your perspective? Big companies with lots of data but heavy legacy systems and maybe internal resistance, or small startups that can move fast without asking for permission when building those new platforms?
I think both, and it depends. But the large companies have a lot of advantages. They have a lot of data. They know their processes, and now they are sitting on a gold mine. But they need to get their act together now. So those that wait 2 years, it's not so much the startups. The startups are also, they go fast, but the ones that succeed will succeed, and the others will be left behind. It's always been the case. But I'm more, comparing medium to large corporates that go fast versus not. Those that wait every single day, every single month, every single year is 10 years. Because innovation goes so fast. So those that can use their data and processes are going much faster right now.
Mm-hmm. Paul, a while ago, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman said that we might soon see a $1 billion company with just one employee. What do you think, what will be the ideal team size in the age of agentic AI?
So I get to disagree with Sam Altman here?
Please.
Okay. I think the question is more nuanced. So what's the ideal team size? I think it's undeniable that a individual with a certain skill set using AI can do more types of work, so their skills get amplified. They can do it faster, and they can do it more independently. So therefore, you are certainly inclined to conclude that at the extreme, you will have the ability to, with one person, get to $1 billion company. It will certainly happen. I don't think that's going to be the norm. So I think there's going to be an entire economy that we still know today that's going to require all the humans that we have around to do certain types of work. But I think it's extremely exciting to see all these founders, builders, our teams that are, if I look at the work that we can do with a few dozen people today compared to what we were able to do 2 years ago is easily double that, right? And I think that trend is only gonna continue. So that means that some of the things that we've been in short supply of, like code, right? Software developers write code. We're in short supply of coders. About 25, 30 million coders around the world globally. Their output has probably doubled in the last year. Maybe it can double again the next 2 years. So that means we'll build faster, more useful products that we need. So I think that, unfortunately, I do agree with the trend of Sam Altman. The question is how long it will take. I'm sure there's 6 different opinions here on that one.
Yeah, and Alexandra, we often talk about which tasks are easy to automate with agentic AI, but less about which ones are actually worth automating. So, where do you expect to see large-scale automation in the next few years, and where will it still be cheaper or smarter to have humans working?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, for us, candidly, we're using agentic AI to make it possible to take out human hours. So the process of actually settling a state is not only more efficient, but more cost effective. So I think when you look at how many hours certain tasks take a human, I think it's worth prioritizing those things. So I think that can make a big impact on productivity and focusing human workforce on more complicated, higher order type judgment type of tasks.
So our time is almost up. Let's wrap up with a quick closing thought from each of you. And yeah, the question is, according to Gartner, we are currently at the peak of the hype cycle when it comes to agents, meaning expectations are far too high. Do you agree? And if so, what do you tell customers and our audience here to manage expectations so we don't end up crashing into the valley of disappointment later on? Who wants to start?
I think we always have to crash. The question is, are we at the hype, the pinnacle of the hype, or are we not? No one knows, because if we do, we'll all be like trading commodities or stock, whatever, we're doing what we're doing. So we always have to fall in that, and we'll always get to that point. It's just a question, are we at the point that we're not at the point? I don't think we're at the point today, but there will be a point in the future, sooner rather than later, that will happen. That's mine.
I think there's multiple facets. I think the whole autonomous, very complex task, that's probably a little bit overhyped, and we need a few more progress on the LLMs and changes on the UI. But in terms of taking a lot of mundane tasks that we all do that burn us out, that take time and add a lot of friction, I think there's a lot of automation we can do in the next few years that will free us up for doing more creative work. And I think that's actually underhyped. The speed at which things are changing and the various innovation at every layer has been like faster than anything else we've seen before.
The speed is under hype. I like that. Yeah.
I think 2 pieces to my answer here. I think one is that if you look at the intelligence per dollar and the trend of that, it's coming down. It's going to continue to keep going down, and that's not a hype, right? That's really happening. The second piece is that how do you bring that intelligence into, in our case, products that are serving hundreds of millions of users every month? That's taking longer than we'd like. So to actually turn that intelligence that we have available here in our phones everywhere and put it into our products and create real business value that shows at the end of the year in the P&L, that's taking longer, but once we get there, the impact's going to be greater than we probably thought.
I think as a founder, I'm a hopeless optimist. I think we haven't even found the spaces that are going to be amazing for AI to be applied to. I think we're just starting. I mean, look, I think a lot of us have lived through the early aughts of seeing the web come to fruition. And so we remember Netscape and Windows, and then there was a crash, and then there was Google, and so on and so forth. But always we were edging up towards progress. And I think that we'll see that rate of acceleration towards progress just increase. And so I think it's going to be an exciting, exciting time for sure.
Yeah, we're living very exciting times. As an anecdote, I met one of the leading LLM founders a couple of years ago now, and he had a singularity clock on his desk. And the first time I came in, I was like, wow, that's really crazy. But nothing is crazy anymore. Like our minds are meant to think linearly. It's very difficult for it's a known psychological thing. Our minds have difficult to comprehend exponentiality. But we're living exponential times, and so I think the key question for our species, sorry to call it our species, is whether we can put in place the right guardrails so that this exponentiality goes in the right direction.
What a great thought to end on it. Thank you so much for the great discussion, and thank you, audience, for listening.